The maintenance bay echoed with the soft click of precision instruments as Specialist Kira Thorne worked her way through the rifle rack. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency across the M2010 sniper system, checking each component with the methodical care of someone who understood that lives depended on flawless equipment. The morning light filtered through high windows, casting long shadows across the concrete floor where she knelt beside the weapon. Other personnel walked past without acknowledgement. To them, she was simply another armorer, another support specialist whose job was to clean and maintain while the real soldiers handled operations. Thorne preferred it that way. She had learned long ago that anonymity was a luxury few could afford in her previous line of work. The familiar weight of the rifle felt natural in her hands as she examined the barrel with a magnifying glass. Every scratch told a story. Every mark held significance. Her trained eye caught imperfections that others would miss, details that could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophe. The heavy boots announced their arrival before Thorne saw them. 3 Navy SEALs entered the armory, their conversation dying as they surveyed the weapon selection. The lead operator, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Vale, moved with the controlled confidence of someone accustomed to life-or-death decisions. "What brings you to my corner of paradise, Chief?" Thorne asked without looking up from her work. "Need to check out some long-range capabilities," Vale replied, his eyes scanning the rifle racks. His gaze settled on the M2010 in her hands. "That one available?" Thorne hesitated for a fraction of a second. This particular rifle held secrets she had hoped would remain buried. "Of course," she said, setting it carefully on the cleaning mat. Vale lifted the weapon with respectful familiarity, running his fingers along the barrel. His expression shifted from casual inspection to focused scrutiny. He paused at a small marking near the muzzle, leaning closer to examine what appeared to be distance markings etched into the metal. 2,940 meters, he read aloud, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. "That can't be right." Vale's teammates gathered around the rifle, their professional interest piqued by the unusual marking. Petty Officer Reese examined the etching with a tactical light, while Petty Officer Garrett shook his head in disbelief. "That's nearly 3 kilometers, Garrett muttered. "World record territory." Thorne forced herself to continue working on another weapon, her movements steady despite the growing attention. "Probably just a manufacturing error," she suggested quietly. "Sometimes the contractors get creative with their markings." Vale wasn't convinced. The etching was too precise, too deliberate. It matched the style of legitimate kill confirmations he had seen on combat-proven rifles. "This isn't factory work," he said, studying Thorne's reaction. "This was done in the field." The implications hung in the air like smoke. A confirmed kill at 2,940 meters would place the shooter among the most elite marksmen in military history. Such distances required not just exceptional skill, but perfect environmental conditions and equipment pushed beyond normal limits. "Look, it's probably nothing," Thorne said, reaching for the rifle. "Let me get you something else that'll better suit your needs." But Vale held firm, his grip protective of the weapon that might hold answers to questions he was just beginning to formulate. Vale's scrutiny intensified as other personnel began to notice the commotion. Staff Sergeant Brennan approached with the swagger of someone who enjoyed asserting authority over support staff. "What's the holdup here?" he demanded, eyeing the rifle with skepticism. "Thorne, why are you wasting the chief's time with damaged equipment?" "It's not damaged," Vale replied firmly. "I'm trying to understand the history of this weapon." Thorne felt the walls closing in as more eyes focused on her. "The rifle belonged to my previous unit," she said carefully. "Transferred with me when I got reassigned to maintenance duties." Brennan laughed harshly. "Right, because armory specialists are known for their combat experience. What's next? You gonna tell us you made that shot?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Thorne's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. Years of conditioning had taught her the value of operational security, even when facing ridicule. Vale noticed her reaction, the way her hands stilled on her work, the subtle tension in her shoulders. In his experience, people who had nothing to hide didn't respond to accusations with such controlled restraint. Words spread through the base like wildfire. By afternoon, curious personnel found excuses to visit the armory, hoping to glimpse the rifle with the impossible kill mark. Thorne endured their whispers and sideways glances while maintaining her focus on routine maintenance tasks. "Heard you're claiming sniper kills now," joked Corporal Martinez as he signed out ammunition. "Next you'll be telling us you're special forces too." The mockery stung, but Thorne had survived worse. She completed his paperwork without response, her professional demeanor intact despite the growing isolation. Vale returned alone in the late afternoon, finding her methodically cleaning rifle components at her workbench. He observed her technique, noting the efficiency and precision that spoke of extensive training. "I've been asking around about you," he said quietly. "Your transfer paperwork is remarkably sparse for someone with your apparent expertise." Thorne didn't look up from her work. "Personnel records can be complicated in this business, Chief." Vale nodded slowly. He understood the nature of classified operations and the people who disappeared from official records to protect ongoing missions. The question was whether Thorne was one of those ghosts. The emergency briefing came at dawn. Colonel Hayes addressed the assembled personnel with grim efficiency, his weathered face reflecting the severity of the situation unfolding on the tactical display. "We have a hostage situation at the embassy compound," he announced. 3 American diplomats are being held by insurgents in a fortified position. Our intelligence indicates they're planning to execute the hostages at sunset. The room tensed as Hayes outlined the challenge. The target building was situated on elevated terrain, surrounded by open ground that made conventional assault impossible. The only viable approach required neutralizing sentries positioned at extreme range. "We need a precision shooter capable of engaging targets at 2,800 meters minimum," Hayes continued. "Our best sniper maxed out at 2,000 in training." Thorne felt her pulse quicken. She had remained silent in the back of the briefing room, but the familiar weight of responsibility pressed against her chest. Lives hung in the balance, and she possessed the skills that could save them. Vale caught her eye from across the room, his expression knowing. "Sir," Thorne said, her voice cutting through the murmured discussions, "I volunteer for the mission." The briefing room erupted in surprised murmurs and barely suppressed laughter. Staff Sergeant Brennan's voice cut through the noise with sharp derision. "You gotta be kidding," he said, his face flushed with disbelief. "An armorer volunteering for a precision shooting mission? This isn't a video game, Thorne." Colonel Hayes studied her with calculating eyes. "Specialist, this mission requires confirmed capability at distances that challenge even our most experienced marksmen. What makes you think you're qualified?" Thorne felt the weight of every stare in the room. The diplomatic hostages had less than 12 hours before the deadline. Standard protocols would require calling in specialized units that might not arrive in time. "Sir, with respect, that rifle knows what it's capable of," she said quietly, gesturing toward the M2010. "The question is whether you trust the evidence." Vale stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of combat experience. "Colonel, I recommend we give her the opportunity. We're running out of time and options." Hayes weighed the unprecedented situation. Lives hung in the balance, and conventional wisdom was failing them. Sometimes desperate circumstances required unconventional solutions. Hayes made the decision with military pragmatism overriding protocol. "Against my better judgment, you have authorization," he told Thorne. "But understand this. If you fail, those hostages die on your conscience." Thorne nodded grimly as she retrieved her M2010 from the armory. The familiar weight settled into her arms like an old friend returning home. She began her methodical preparation, checking every component with the precision of someone who understood that perfection was not optional. Vale watched her work, noting the transformation in her demeanor. Gone was the quiet maintenance specialist, replaced by someone whose movements spoke of lethal competence. "What's your effective range?" he asked quietly. "Depends on conditions," she replied, adjusting the scope with practiced efficiency. "Wind, temperature, humidity, target movement." At 2,800 meters, I need everything perfect. The convoy departed as afternoon shadows lengthened. Thorne rode in silence, mentally calculating ballistics while reviewing intelligence photos of the target area. The embassy compound sat on a ridge, requiring her to engage from an elevated position across a valley that would test every skill she had ever learned. Time compressed as they approached the shooting position. The overwatch position offered a commanding view of the embassy compound below. Thorne established her shooting rest with mechanical precision, her movements economical and purposeful. The M2010 settled into position as she began her final calculations. Wind is variable at 7 knots from the northwest, reported the spotter assigned to assist her. Temperature dropping as the sun sets. Thorne made minute adjustments to her scope, compensating for the environmental factors that would affect her bullet's 3-second flight time. At 2,847 meters, the margin for error approached zero. Vale positioned himself nearby with binoculars, coordinating with the assault team, waiting for a signal. The hostages were visible through the compound windows, their captors positioned at strategic points throughout the building. Multiple targets, she murmured, studying the tactical situation. I can see 3 sentries, but there are probably more inside. The radio crackled with updates from surveillance drones. Sunset approached rapidly, bringing the deadline that would seal the hostage's fate. Thorne's breathing steadied into the rhythm she had perfected through years of training and combat experience that officially never happened. Target acquired, she announced quietly. Time crystallized into a single moment of absolute focus. Thorne's world narrowed to the crosshairs, her breathing synchronized with the rhythm of her heartbeat. The first target moved across her scope with predictable patrol timing. "Send it," Vale whispered into his radio. The M2010 bucked against her shoulder with control violence. The suppressed report echoed across the valley as the .300 Winchester Magnum round began its journey through nearly 3 kilometers of hostile air. 3.2 seconds later, the distant figure crumpled. "Target down," confirmed the drone operator. "Clean hit." Without pause, Thorne adjusted her aim to the second sentry. Her muscle memory guided the rifle through minute corrections as she tracked the moving target. The mathematics of death played out in her mind with lethal precision. The second shot followed immediately. Another confirmed kill at impossible range. Vale watched through his binoculars as the assault team moved. The remaining insurgents inside the building had no idea their perimeter had been compromised by a ghost shooter operating at distances they couldn't comprehend. 2 down, Thorne reported calmly. Assault team has clean entry. The assault team's radio crackled with success. All hostages secure, came the report. Building cleared, no friendly casualties. Vale stared at Thorne with newfound respect as she began methodically packing her equipment. The woman who had been dismissed as a simple armorer had just executed 2 of the most difficult shots in military history under combat pressure. "Who are you really?" he asked quietly. Thorne paused in her equipment breakdown. "Someone who used to do this professionally," she admitted. "Before I decided, I preferred maintaining weapons to using them." The implications hit him like a physical blow. The kill mark on the rifle wasn't random or fabricated. It represented confirmed elimination at 2,940 meters, a distance that would place her among the most elite snipers in special operations history. "Your record is classified, isn't it?" Vale said. "That's why there's no documentation. Some operations never officially happened," she replied, shouldering her rifle case. "Some people were never officially there." As they prepared to return to base, Vale understood that he had witnessed something extraordinary. The quiet specialist who cleaned their weapons was a legend hiding in plain sight among them. The base buzzed with news of the successful hostage rescue by morning. Colonel Hayes called Thorne to his office, where Vale waited with a knowing smile. The atmosphere had shifted completely from the previous day's skepticism. "Outstanding work, specialist," Hayes said, his tone carrying genuine respect. "I owe you an apology for doubting your capabilities." Thorne nodded quietly. Just doing my job, sir. Staff Sergeant Brennan appeared in the doorway, his earlier arrogance replaced by uncomfortable acknowledgement. I wanted to apologize for my comments yesterday, he said stiffly. I was out of line. The transformation rippled through the entire base. Personnel who had mocked her now approached with deference, seeking advice on equipment and techniques. The quiet armorer had become someone whose expertise commanded attention and respect. Vale found her in the armory that afternoon, back to her routine maintenance work. You're going to stay in this assignment, he asked. Someone has to keep your weapons functioning properly, she replied with the hint of a smile. If you enjoyed this story of hidden military expertise, drop a comment about your favorite moment or tell us about someone you know who proved their worth when it mattered most.